Historical and mythical facts about Thor. Thor, one of the most famous gods in Norse mythology, was the god of thunder, lightning, storms, oak trees, strength, the protection of humanity, and sacred groves. He was the son of Odin, the chief god, and Jord, the goddess of the earth. Thor was one of the most popular gods among the Vikings, and his cult was widespread in Scandinavia. In myths, Thor appears as a mighty warrior who fights giants, Jotun, and other monsters that threaten gods and humanity. His main weapon was the hammer Mjolnir, which could summon lightning and thunder, and always return to his hand after being thrown. Thor was also the protector of gods and people against chaos, personified by Jotun and other dark forces. Historical sources such as the Poetic Edda and the Prose Edda, written in the Middle Ages, have preserved many myths about Thor. They include numerous adventures of the god where he fights monsters, searches for stolen items, or simply demonstrates his might. Thor is also often depicted in the company of other gods, such as his wife Sif, his children Modi and Magni, and his loyal servant Thialfi. Archaeological findings also confirm the cult of Thor. For example, numerous amulets in the shape of Mjolnir have been found throughout Scandinavia. These amulets were worn as protection against evil forces and as a symbol of faith in the god. Some of these amulets feature runes, emphasizing their religious significance. From historical and mythological sources, we know that Thor was an extremely revered god among the ancient Scandinavians. His strength, courage, and ability to protect were the qualities most valued by the Vikings. He embodied the Viking spirit, their readiness for battle, and unwavering faith in their gods. Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, is one of the most famous weapons in mythology. According to the myths, the hammer was created by the dwarven brothers Sindri and Brokkr. According to legend, Loki, the deity of tricks and deception, decided to test the dwarves' craftsmanship by wagering his head. Sindri and Brokkr took on the challenge, but Loki tried to interfere by turning into a fly and biting Brokkr during the forging process. Despite these efforts, the hammer was forged, although its handle turned out to be slightly shorter than planned. Mjolnir had extraordinary properties. It could strike any target with immense force, and always returned to Thor's hand after being thrown. The hammer could also create lightning and thunder, making it not only a weapon but also a symbol of Thor's power and might. According to legend, only Thor was able to lift Mjolnir, highlighting his extraordinary strength. Thor used his hammer in many battles against Jotun and other enemies. One of the most famous stories tells of how the giant Thrym stole Mjolnir and demanded Freya, the goddess of love and fertility, as ransom. Thor and Loki devised a plan in which Thor disguised himself as Freya to infiltrate Thrym's domain. Once the hammer was returned, Thor dealt with the giant and his family. Mjolnir also played an important role in rituals and celebrations. For example, the hammer was used to bless marriages, births, and other significant events. It was a symbol of protection and well-being, and its image was often used in amulets and other religious items. Historical and archaeological evidence attests to the immense significance of the hammer in Norse culture and religion. Mjolnir was not just a weapon, but a symbol of strength, protection, and divine power. It was the embodiment of Thor and his role as the protector of people and gods. Thor's belt of strength. Thor's belt of strength, known as Mjolnir or Mjolnir, was an important attribute of the god of thunder. According to myths, this belt doubled Thor's strength, making him invincible in battle. Mjolnir was a necessary element for Thor, especially in his fight against Jotun and other powerful enemies. Mjolnir was made by the dwarves, masters of blacksmithing, who also created other magical items for the gods. The dwarves were considered the best blacksmiths in all 9 worlds, and their creations were always extraordinarily powerful and magical. Unfortunately, the exact history of the belt's creation has not been preserved in myths, but its significance was undeniable. Thor used Mjolnir in many of his battles and adventures. For example, when he went to fight against giant Jotun or other monsters, he always wore his belt to ensure his victory. The belt allowed him to lift Mjolnir and use it to its full extent, despite the weight and magical properties of the hammer. In addition to battles, Mjolnir had symbolic meaning. It embodied the strength and might that surpassed human capabilities. The belt also symbolized the connection between Thor and other gods, his role as a protector and warrior capable of fighting the strongest enemies. Thor's belt of strength was not only a physical attribute, but also a symbol of his divinity and power. It emphasized his unique role in Norse mythology and was an important element in many stories and myths about Thor. Thor's iron gloves. Thor's iron gloves, known as Járngrípur or Járnrimur, were another important attribute of the god of thunder. According to myths, these iron gloves allowed Thor to firmly grip Mjolnir and use it with maximum efficiency. They also protected his hands from the extraordinary power and magical properties of the hammer. Like Mjolnir, Járngrípur were made by the dwarves. These masters of blacksmithing created items with incredible precision and craftsmanship, using magical materials and spells. The gloves were made from extremely strong iron, capable of withstanding extreme conditions and loads. Thor wore Járngrípur in all his battles to be able to effectively use Mjolnir. They provided him with a reliable grip on the hammer and protection from its magical power. This was especially important during battles with Jotun and other powerful enemies, where every blow was crucial. Járngrípur also had symbolic significance. They emphasized Thor's physical strength and skill, his ability to handle magical and dangerous items. The gloves were a symbol of his might and invincibility, his readiness to fight the fiercest enemies for the sake of protecting gods and people. Thor's gloves were an important part of his image as a warrior and protector. They emphasized his ability to control magical forces and use them for good. Járngrípur were not only a physical attribute, but also a symbol of his divine strength and courage.
Did Thor really exist? The idea that Thor really existed may seem fantastical, but some aspects of his legend are thought-provoking. According to Norse myths, Thor lived during the times when Vikings ruled Scandinavia, approximately between the 8th and 11th centuries. One of the most intriguing details of his legend is that Thor needed iron gloves to use Mjolnir. This fact may have an interesting scientific explanation and could serve as confirmation of his existence. According to myths, Mjolnir could summon lightning, prompting thoughts on how exactly this happened. Lightning is a powerful electrical discharge that passes through the air and can heat metal to extremely high temperatures. If we imagine that Mjolnir was made of a material that could conduct electricity, the hammer could heat up to extremely high temperatures when summoning lightning. This suggests that the legends about Thor reflect real phenomena that ancient people could observe. Using iron gloves to protect their hands from the hot hammer is a compelling argument in favor of Mjolnir's potential real existence and functioning as described in myths. The fact that ancient Scandinavians knew about the properties of electricity and its ability to heat metal indicates a high level of their knowledge of nature. Interestingly, the principle of heating metal with electric current was studied in the 18th century when scientists like Benjamin Franklin and Alessandro Volta began experimenting with electricity. However, the myths about Thor and his hammer existed long before these scientific discoveries. This may indicate that ancient people had some understanding of electrical phenomena, even if they did not understand them in the modern scientific sense. There is a possibility that the legends about Thor preserve real knowledge about natural phenomena known in the early Middle Ages. Ancient Scandinavians could observe Thor's lightning and its impact on his hammer, giving them grounds for creating the legends about Mjolnir. This confirms the reality of some aspects of these myths and strengthens the arguments for Thor's existence. Thus, the legend of Thor, his hammer and iron gloves, may contain more truth than it seems at first glance. It points to the existence of ancient knowledge about electricity and its properties, which may serve as confirmation of the reality of some aspects of the myths. Although we cannot assert that Thor existed in the literal sense, his legend reflects the rich world of ancient knowledge and perceptions of nature and its forces, and can be interpreted as confirmation of the existence of both the god of thunder and his mighty hammer.